Welcome everyone to another edition of the Unpredictable Pipeline. We are featuring marketing leaders throughout the B2B space who are striving to create predictable pipeline, but then have faced the headwinds of 2020. And very excited to have with us today a guest who has some great examples of what has been done. Rachel, thank you very much for joining us today. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, your role at the company, and then what you guys have been doing to try to pivot into this year.
Yeah, will do. Thanks so much for having me, Matt. My name is Rachael Tiow, as Matt has said, and I lead all the global account-based marketing here at Auth0. So at Auth0, we are very, very focused in making identity super simple for businesses, that anything that comes to removing manual coding to scaling, because if your customers can't log in to your application, we have a tough situation there. So what we've been doing ever since COVID has happened was, what are some programs that work very well in different parts of go-to-market that we can adapt and adjust to the times? Before COVID happened, we were hosting in-person identity over lunch discussions. It's really a very casual way for us to bond and build relationships with our customers. And very quickly we pivoted and thought, hey, relationships matter even from a prospect perspective. How do we adapt that in a virtual way? So we quickly shifted gears. Events were shutting down left and right, and we came together and said, hey, let's move into this model because we see it very successful for our customer marketing. We scrambled together. It was, I guess, in a very scrappy way where a lot of startups were probably experiencing. Let's get the Zoom invites sorted out, or we're going to run it through GoToWebinar. Let's pull a list of our accounts that we know our sales reps are actively working and invite them over a lunch. The way we ran it was, hey, Matt, sign up for this event for us. Over lunch, we'll talk about identity. And right before the day of lunch, we send them an Uber Eats gift card. The feedback that we've heard so far was, we enjoy it so much, we didn't even buy lunch because we're very engaged in the discussion. And oftentimes that has turned into a roundtable discussion unintentionally. So that's something that we learned from that event was, people wanted to meet us, not so much of just hearing what we have to say, but also learn what's our peers doing in the marketplace in terms of identity.
Well, it wasn't a presentation, it was a discussion, right? Which think it made it different than, your typical webinar or your typical online event where you just kind of sit there and watch. If you feel like you're a participant and and it keeps you engaged, but it also feels like you're getting more value.
Yep, indeed. Yeah, people love that, right? We love to hear ourselves talk.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you mentioned, as we talked about this beforehand, was sort of IT over coffee, which I was really interested in hearing about because, as we both said, there's a lot of companies that have tried to do these virtual events, but when everybody's trying to do it, it's really hard to sort of break out and cut through the clutter. Talk about IT over coffee and why that has cut through the clutter and been successful.
Yeah, the identity over coffee was also an adaptation from lunch. We're based out here in Seattle, so Pacific Standard Time. So if we're going to have lunch at that hour, the East Coasters won't be able to join. They're ready to clock out of work, ready for happy hour. So we thought, you know what, why not Auth0? Let's cater throughout your entire day. We'll have coffee, lunch, and cocktails. So that was what came about just through brainstorming as a team. And we said, let's try coffee. If people can't join us for lunch, let's see if we can have what we call coffee talks. And again, it's not so much us talking at them, but let's bring together and have a discussion around identity over a cup of coffee. In a very similar way, we will send them a Starbucks gift card so that they can get their coffee. And it's making the message a little bit light. Hey, Matt, in the amount of time for you to order coffee, we can have a discussion about identity. It's something that's so boring that we don't think about day in and out, and make it light and joyful to jumpstart their day.
Yeah. Well, and I think that part of the reason I think those have been successful, as you and I both know, IT professionals, IT leaders can be a difficult audience to impress. They have their hackles up quite a bit for bad marketing and bad selling. And I think part of just the way you've described the way I've seen IT over coffee work is because it's not Auth0 talking to IT people, it's IT people talking to IT people that you guys have facilitated. It's that peer-to-peer format, especially in an adverse time when we're all sitting in our same bunker, home offices, even more removed from the regular world, it can feel
Yeah.
lonely. And so to have an opportunity to talk to each other is one of the elements that really helps that cut through the clutter.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Matt. One thing that we have also noticed outside of these coffee and cocktail conversations or lunch is even through our virtual events, people love that sense of connectedness and belonging. When we got to attend trade shows, one thing that got me excited about was not so much talking to the salespeople, but what kind of swags are different companies coming out with to capture our attention. And surprisingly, that's something that people love, that sense of connectedness to the brand. What swags are you guys giving? And even through our virtual events now, we have our own swag booth embedded into the virtual events that we're doing, just to turn things up a bit in terms of the relationship side.
Oh yeah, I mean, and some of this stuff is actually it's perceived greater and is less expensive than you otherwise would have done. I was at a conference a few years ago, and it was a full day workshop, and the attendees were given like a $40 gift card to go spend lunch somewhere, around. This is like in the Moscone Center area, San Francisco.
Yeah.
There's restaurants all over the place. People were given $40 gift card to go spend somewhere, and everyone's like, "This is so generous. This is amazing." And I remember talking to the event organizer afterward, and she's like, "We're glad you thought that, but if we would have eaten here in the hotel, it would have been $100 just for a sandwich, buffet. So we saved 60% and made y'all a lot happier because you could choose what you wanted to eat, and $40
Yes.
for lunch, pretty decent amount to go get yourself a sandwich or a burger or something." So I think being creative like that, especially when you're forced to do it, when you can't do those events, when you can't get together for lunch, when you have to let someone order that lunch themselves,
Yeah.
it's different. Are there lessons from what you have seen in both of these events where you've taken the customer program and used those for prospects, IT over coffee? I imagine some of this, even if magically tomorrow we could go back to normal and all the sort of, the COVID issues were gone, some of these things would endure. I imagine some of these things will have really changed the way you think about account-based and field marketing.
Yeah, indeed. We haven't had talks as a group in terms of, are we going to prolong this when times are better? But we are, for sure, we want to go back to trade shows. That's hands down without a doubt. But these events such as coffee talks or identity over lunch, in fact, we even kind of revised it for the customer account-based marketing side and call it CXO coffee talk. So we've had our CPO, our CSO, our CTO talk, because that one-on-one time with our C-suite where they know what's happening in the market. They understand the vision of the business, because ultimately when they're buying a brand, it's not just the nuts and bolts of the technology, it's the people behind it, right? So those things will endure. On my side of the house, with my team, we've talked about, let's keep this going. It's the relationship, to your point earlier, it's $40 to the company, but at the end of the day, it's that making you guys happy. And that's something money can't buy ultimately.
Well, and I think that there's, we can talk about how efficient it is to get on a Zoom meeting and how I don't have to get on a plane and I can do these meetings and I don't have to get in my car and go to the office. But there's a lot lost in translation here, right? And I think, we've only had Zoom for what, 5+ years. We've had email for maybe 30. We've had face-to-face communication for tens of thousands of years. So this is how to be together is how we're predisposed to communicate. And I think that, there will be some business travel that goes down. There will be some in-person field events that may not come back at the same volume.
Yep.
But I think that because of the value of relationships, especially when you're doing a big deal, when the money at play is 6-7 figures, aren't you willing to get in front of someone? Aren't you willing to spend a little more time and effort? It's not about efficiency at that point. It's about effectiveness. And investing in that relationship can be a difference maker.
Most definitely. Yeah. So we have, since we've talked about identity over lunch and coffee and cocktails, it has definitely evolved. So things that we're learning, back to your question earlier, was what else can we do? And you're right. We can treat this as a gift to us as companies, where we go, if this had not happened, we wouldn't come up with such creative ways to engage. And I think sometimes we forget, right? Especially at Auth0, we're very aligned with revenue. We're always thinking about pipeline and close one. We don't even talk about MQL. MQL is like a dirty word for us. But when we're in this space right now and we're thinking about relationships and engagement, it brings a humanness back to what marketing is and what sales is really.
Well, and there's some of that, you know, with those bigger accounts is for the right reasons, not scalable to everybody that you're selling to. And that's okay, but I think we can still create that human touch for every one of our prospects. It is still worth taking that extra time in most cases to sort of build the relationship and create some differentiation. And I do agree with you. I think the creativity that we're seeing from companies right now, we work with a client that did they were in the industrial marketing, and so they did industrial manufacturing space. Excuse me. They did a how to cook the perfect steak event, and they didn't just invite a chef to come on and show people. They sent people, like literally. They sent a box showed up, and it wasn't just the steak. It was 2 steaks and a bottle of wine and everything else you would need for dinner. And when all was said and done, it was significantly less expensive than doing an event, you know, next to the trade show and renting out some restaurant or something. But people were so impressed that all this stuff showed up, that they had a chef that they knew in the market. And it was just like, ask me questions. Why do I do it this way? I mean, it was just, it was something that people may not have done if they could have just done the happy hour at the trade show. So to be able to be creative like this, I mean, there's a level of incremental thinking of how do I get more people to my booth, or exponential thinking, which is, or if we just sent people a bunch of steaks to cook at home, right? And then do breakout rooms where people can go and they can compete, and we're looking for the best grill marks, and you're going to get a prize if you got the best grill marks. This is all true. So it was pretty fun. So I think, look, I mean, this has been a tough year, and you don't want to downplay some of the challenges a lot of people have gone through with health and with their businesses. But you know, I think there's a lot of really interesting innovations happening this year. And Rachel, I really appreciate you taking time to join us today and share some of what you're working on today. Thank you everyone for joining us. Another edition of the Unpredictable Pipeline. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Matt. See ya.